the entirety of going from now until retirement, picture it as like an ecosystem. Just it's a self-contained bubble. Okay. Now inside of that bubble, there's a math equation. There is a math equation. There's literally formulas and numbers and variables that will tell you how to go from now until retirement. But because there are variables, that means it's not fixed. And so I tell people we can do a couple of different things to get to the final number in retirement accounts that we need to successfully step into retirement. If you kind of play that backwards, you know that there's a lower number, a lower number, a lower number. If you follow that graph all the way backwards, you get to today. But we get to design the path as we go. So we can, and I say some people like to save the same amount every month from now until retirement. And that's totally fine. And if we want to plug that in the formula, we can.
Hey there, and welcome to Money and You. I'm Michelle Perkins, your host. My search for more fulfilling work led me to career and business coaching, where I stumbled upon a game-changing discovery. Money issues often start with our mindset and habits. You see, our relationship with money is the key to overcoming those frustrating financial obstacles. As an entrepreneur, coach, and problem solver, I'm passionate about helping you create a great relationship with money. Because, turns out, that's the foundation for a limit-free life. Each week on Money and You, I speak with amazing guests about all things money, mindset, practical tips, and everything in between. We're here to give you new insights, education, and empowerment so money can be one of your favorite relationships. So join us for some lively conversations and let's transform your financial life together. Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of the Money and You Show. So happy to be here with you all today and to bring on a terrific guest who I had a great conversation with, and I'm super excited that he's taking the time out of his busy life to share some of his insights with you. I am going to read something that caught my eye on his website, which is Second Comma. His name is Mark Hansen, and one of the little sections on there when I was looking for more about Mark is one that jumped out at me, and it says, "What I do is help you take a breath," which I think is so important around money. As a financial planner specializing in single income families, his goal is to free up your time and your mind by moving some of the most complex financial items off your plate. So, Mark, welcome. We're going to have you go a little further into that, and we'd love to know kind of how you got to the place where you wanted to do that for people.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. I would say my path into this is much more into financial planning. It's much more of a discovery than it is an intentional walk. It's much more of a meander. But where I found myself was in, let's call it corporate America, doing the typical 9 to 5 thing. And over the course of time, my career took me deeper and deeper into Microsoft Excel. And then people started hearing, oh, Mark's pretty good at Microsoft Excel. Mark runs the budgeting team. I wonder if he can help me with my personal budget. And so people would come in and they'd say, hey, can you help me? And I say, of course, of course. I really wanted to help as many people as I could. And so we'd talk about some stuff. And this continued on. And then this email came out from the head of HR that said, whoever's giving financial advice to their coworkers needs to stop immediately. And I thought I might be in the wrong career. I wonder if I'm in the wrong career. And so flash forward a couple of years and here we sit, Mark Hansen, Second Comma. And I love helping people be more intentional with their money and try to take finances and as best we can, put it on the back burner so they can free up our time.
Oh, thank you. That's great. It all came back to me when you said that. I remembered that story now. So, yeah, that is super cool. I also think it's very interesting, sort of philosophically, that the HR person wanted you to stop immediately sharing valuable money information with people because that's the way our society works with money. It's like, let's not educate people. Let's not help each other or have money conversations and then we'll be great. But so I think that's terrific what you're doing. And why did you move into financial planning versus maybe something, more budget oriented since you were doing that?
Yeah. Well, what I realized was budgeting was really just a piece of the larger puzzle. If you get the budget, so if we get it figured out, if we use our air quotes there, you still need to know what to do with the money. How do you steward the money? Even if you can get the day-to-day puzzle piece of budgeting figured out, and even if you can commit to the week in and week out doing of the budget, you still need to do something with that money to get you from now into retirement. And that's where, under the umbrella of financial planning, I really enjoyed that whole walk. I hope that these are 10 and 20 and 30-year relationships with people to take them from where they are, which is maybe money confusion, and then through the process of teaching them stewardship, get them into a retirement that feels comfortable mentally more so than anything else, and help them understand how to maybe pass that wisdom down to the next generation.
Yeah, and you look pretty young. So, I mean, were you concerned with retirement or engaging in retirement savings and things like that early? Or, I mean, was that already something you were doing?
Yeah, I'm more of a leap then look kind of a person, unfortunately, and I did the same thing when it came to saving for retirement. And so what that looked like was I talked to somebody and they said, well, start out at 4% or so for putting away your money, and then every year just try to increase it by 1%, and eventually, if you can get to something like 10%, that would be really good. And so I just went in and set it at 10% and said I'll figure it out from there. And so 10%, and just kind of from there, and I realized, oh, that's a way to do this. You can start at two or three and go up one, 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 one. You can also start at 10 and just kind of figure it out from there. But I realized after talking to some other people, let's say flashback to that story I was telling, the people that are coming into my office and asking me for help, I realized they started at zero and they stayed at zero. And then they were trying to go to one and to two. And I realized, oh, wow, this is a very different path that people are taking. And I started to become very curious. Like, why do people take these different paths?
Mhm.
It's one instance where leaping and then looking actually played out better for me. Not to say that I've made it or I've arrived or that I don't do any financial planning for myself. It just was very interesting getting the money into the accounts.
Yeah, I love this. And it really brings up, your whole relationship with money and your mindset around money because I feel it's just a feeling, not proven, but I feel like the reason people are saying, start with two, three, four, ramp up is because overall people kind of don't expect that people are going to do anything. And so I feel like to make it, easier to stomach, like just do a little bit. But what you did is really the smartest thing is don't do a little bit. I mean, do as much as you can do or do more than you think you can do because it's just putting you so far ahead of the game. Um,
Yeah, and I talk about that sometimes too with my clients. It just in general, it's if you do too much, you can always dial it back.
yeah.
But if you do too little, you're giving up time, and that's a very, very different equation. I am of the mindset the way that I wanted to approach it. I would rather realize, oh wow, it's kind of hard to pay the light bill. I should probably dial back that 401k contribution versus, let's say I'm in my mid 50s or something and realize, oh wow, I paid the light bill really easily. I wish I would have put more money into the 401k.
Yeah. Yeah. And how, just tell us a little with what you've seen people adjust to things. You feel like you can't do something. And, it's like the idea of the automatic withdrawals. I mean, if you're automatically sending, however much to your investment account every month, you do forget about it. I mean, it is weird. It's a psychological thing. I mean, I guess if you were really, really, really struggling, maybe not. But for most people, if you're working and you have an income and you do these things that are sort of happening without you doing much, you just adjust, so I don't know, what do you see, how do you implement some of those strategies in what you do?
Yeah, well, I think we see that principle everywhere all the time. As in, if you pay for something like Netflix, eventually you don't realize you're paying for Netflix anymore. Okay, and maybe we think a little bit larger. If you went to the exact same vacation every year, you might find yourself becoming bored of that destination. And I realized it doesn't specifically matter how many dollars we attach to a specific thing. If it happens enough and that cadence continues, we don't realize that the money's going wherever it's going. And so then if we just say, okay, so pretty much any money that I spend on pretty much anything, I will eventually forget that I'm spending the money there. Then it is simply orienting and sequencing how the money comes out of our account and where it goes. And if we can get the money going to the places that we want it to go first, and then we forget that we're doing something really good, I mean, that's a back burner platform that I can really get behind.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's one of the coolest things you can do with your money. And your example of Netflix, oh my gosh, I literally just this last American Express bill tried to go through and see what the subscription thing is crazy. I mean, if I got rid of half the subscriptions and just, I mean, I wouldn't know that they were gone and I could use that money for something else. So anyway, that's a great example. We're all doing it, so we can all see it. Let's go back to the budgeting for just a minute because a lot of what I'd help people with are the fundamentals like that. I try not to call it budgeting because that term is just, so whatever. But what a spending plan, whatever you want to call it. So I just heard a really other great term for it that I can't remember, but it was like something magical, like to make it really enticing. But it's all kind of the same. It's really just I always say you need to know how much it costs to be you. So, you know, there there's not a lot of judgment put on that. There's not a lot of right or wrong. It's just how much is it costing you right now to be you? And then what do you want to do with that information? But I feel like those kinds of fundamentals people have to put in place before they can really be successful investors and kind of go that to that next step. I mean, to me, a lot of it is understanding your relationship with money, your beliefs, your ideas, the things limiting you inside your head. And then you have to put the fundamentals in place, and then you can sort of be a successful investor. But what's your that's my own little philosophy. What is yours?
I think I think you said something really interesting there, and I take that same approach of what does it cost to be you? And then I always tell my clients when we start talking about household cash flow and kind of where's the money going, everybody thinks I'm about to tell them don't ever go to Chick-fil-A again, cancel Amazon Prime, and don't ever turn your TV on again. And I tell them none of those things matter to me. We will always talk about the consequences, good and bad, of the life that you tell me you want to live.
Mhm.
And from that perspective, we can talk about it. And it's very easy to talk about it because I let them know if you tell me I can't not go to Chick-fil-A twice a week, that's fine. We're just going to build it in. And
Yeah.
as long as we know it's part of the plan, that's fine. The most absurd version of this is if I would go to a client and I would say, just cancel. They say, what do I cancel? I say, cancel everything. Hey, well, why would I do that? It's because then only turn back on the things that you remember that you're not experiencing anymore.
That's kind of good. I like that.
And it sounds absurd, but then if you think about it, is how many things could we stop paying for and not even realize that that money's not going to that place anymore? Now, if I flip on the light switch and the lights don't come on, and I really wish the lights would come on, then I remember I do want to pay my electric bill. I like when the water comes out of the tap and the lights turn on. I like that little magic box on the side of my wall that lets me tell the air what temperature to be. But from there, we can really start getting into the sequence of things. And I tell people I have five main categories, and they're categories because they're not prescriptive. They're purely descriptive, right? And so I say, imagine that there's five tables at a banquet, and you have to serve all five tables, and you are going to serve them in a specific order. And I say the order is going to be, generosity is at table one. And some people do and don't serve that table. And I don't put that on people. I just tell them that's table one. Table two is going to be saving. Table three is investing. And then table four is your fixed expenses. And then the final table is your variable expenses. And people always say, well, how do I know if something should be at table four or at table five? Is it a fixed expense or is it a variable expense? And I say these are things that if you stop paying for them, they get taken away. And you either care or you don't care. And that's how you know if it's a fixed expense or a variable expense. As an example, I specifically, myself, and there's no judgment here, I don't care about Netflix. So if I had Netflix in my budget, it would be at table five, a variable expense. And then why do we want to know about fixed and variable expenses? Well, let's say we do the analysis. It's, hey, Michelle, what we need to do is get about $800 more a month headed into some investment accounts. And then you say, well, gee, where am I going to find that money? And then I can say, start at table five. Start at your variable expenses because those are the ones you've already told yourself and told me you're willing to cut those. And then people understand, oh, that's why we're supposed to do this money stewardship thing, is so that we understand where to cut.
Mm. That's great. I love the tables. I love that whole analogy. It's really easy for people to see. And I wish we talked about money more in this way, where people can relate to it, they can visualize some things, and you put it in a way that's not scary. It's like, here are your variable expenses. Like you figure it out, you choose. I mean, and just knowing that there are that many variable expenses. I just had this conversation with my daughter, and she was saying she has a pretty good salary, but she's like, there's no way I could, live in this town without some help from me. I still pay for a few things. Um, and I thought about it, and it's like, we kind of went through that exercise a little, and there's a lot she'd have to stop doing. But truly, it's variable stuff,
Yeah.
that you're engaging in buying whatever. And I think we lose because we build our lives around all of these things and we're comfortable, but we don't feel like we're not going crazy. I'm not running to Beverly Hills every 5 minutes and buying a new purse, but so it starts to feel like you forget how much of that really you don't need to be doing. If you want to, you can. Like you say, I think the whole reason budgeting got a bad name is because people did think it meant cut things out of your life. And it's really more just have your information. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
I love what you said too. It reminded me when my office is in the middle of being redone, but I couldn't redo it without taking every single thing out of it. And then, like you said, I'm trying to only bring in the things I really want. It was chock full of stuff that I really didn't need anymore. So that's a great way to do it. I feel like
Yeah.
kids, credit cards and starting over and seeing what I have.
Yeah. Yeah. The worst way to go about it would be just cancel all of your credit cards and wait till the mail starts showing up. And then it's like, oh, I do want to pay for that. Oh, yeah, that's right.
I know. It's great. But the thing is, you can do all that. And unless you make some new decisions about what to do with the savings that maybe are coming from this, because that's the easiest thing for people to do is find savings and then just find new ways to spend it. So that's
Yep.
where the discipline comes in. And how
Yep.
do you feel about discipline?
I think this is something else that I tell people all the time when I view my role as a financial advisor. My one of my biggest fears is that people would take their one life, they would take the hours of that life, they would work very hard, and they would dedicate their time, and they would trade those hours for dollars, and then they would waste the dollars. And that's all I'm trying to point people out. I'm just trying to show them you got those dollars by trading your time, your wisdom, something. Yeah, as you climb the chain, so to speak, you get to trade your wisdom more so than your manpower, but you are trading something for dollars. And if you want to waste the dollars, that's okay. Please don't make me watch it. But I'm trying to let people know this money didn't just show up in your account. If you're really blessed, somebody else, maybe in your lineage, traded their time or their wisdom for the dollars. I try really hard to help people see that full circle view, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I love this idea of being a steward for people's money because we don't tend to always do that for ourselves. It depends on, sort of your money personality and the way you operate with money. But there are people who very quickly get rid of any additional money that comes their way. And then there are other people who squander it and don't really live their life. And I mean, there's a lot of different, money beliefs and consequently personalities out there. Um, what's a good balance to you between saving, spending, living your life, not living your life?
Yeah. So I explain this to my clients pretty frequently that the entirety of going from now until retirement. Picture it as like an ecosystem. Just it's a self-contained bubble. Okay. Now inside of that bubble, there's a math equation. There is a math equation. There's literally formulas and numbers and variables that will tell you how to go from now until retirement. But because there are variables, that means it's not fixed. And so I tell people we can do a couple of different things to get to the final number in retirement accounts that we need to successfully step into retirement. If you kind of play that backwards, you know that there's a lower number, a lower number, a lower number. If you follow that graph all the way backwards, you get to today. but we get to design the path as we go. So we can, and I say some people like to save the same amount every month from now until retirement. And that's totally fine. And if we want to plug that in the formula, we can. Some people want to save upfront and then let time do a lot of the compounding, the heavy lifting for them. And that's okay. The formula allows for that too. Some people are in a life circumstance where they need to spend all of their money right now on things that they say are valuable. And that means we're going to backload savings for retirement. And that's okay too. The formula can handle all three. And so I tell people I basically set it up as if you want to get to retirement, let's go flat level, save the same amount every single month. Let's start there. If you can't save that amount because household cash flow doesn't allow it, then we are naturally doing the backloading of saving for retirement. If I give you a number and you're saving more than that, then we're naturally front loading retirement. And then I let people know at a certain point, we're only going to do one of three things. We will exactly hit retirement exactly when you wanted to. Something will happen that will extend retirement out, or something will happen that will bring retirement closer. And when you start to break it down, that is mathematically as simple as it is to retire. Now, your formula looks different than my formula, looks different than anybody who's listening. We don't have the same formula. And in my mind, from my perspective, that's why a financial planner might be somebody who's helpful to talk to, is because there's not just a simple sticky note that I can mail out to everybody and now everybody knows how to retire. But the formula is mildly flexible, but also mildly rigid at the same time. I hope I've been able to describe that well.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love that. And as a financial planner, are you also a financial advisor? Can you help people with their investments? Uh,
Yes, yes. And so I do help people with we'll call it AUM. That's the typical financial plan. So assets under management. I can manage people's assets. Sometimes there's not a lot of A to put under M, if that makes sense. And we're trying to maybe figure out a budget to get things directed into the correct accounts, and that all falls under the idea of what do I call that? Fee for service is what I technically call it, but that's financial planning. And so there is the advisor, there is the planning. For me, they're pretty interchangeable, but there's two things that I can offer to people. If you have money saved up, I can help manage that. If you need to understand, how do I take the dollars that come into my bank account and put them into the assets that need to be managed or turn them into that? That's all financial planning. And there's a lot of help that I can provide around there. But I do provide both of those services. I think that they're helpful. Um, it's important to me to be able to walk, like I said, alongside somebody,
Mhm.
which means I don't find a lot of enjoyment in just walking around looking for people that have already successfully saved for retirement and
Yeah.
helping them keep that money. I really enjoy helping people direct that money, steward that money into their investment accounts.
Yeah, I love that. And I do like the distinction between the planning and the investing because I do think a lot of people don't realize that there are people like you who will help them, move to that point and then, maybe also help them with their investing. But um a lot of people do avoid the financial industry until they feel like they have enough to go talk to an advisor. And that's not what they should be doing, really. Um I there was something I wanted to go back to here that you were discussing. Yeah, oh, entrepreneurship. So you went from a corporate situation to being an entrepreneur, and I I think I read that you help a lot of entrepreneurs as well. But there are some very specific financial issues that come up with entrepreneurs, especially, and maybe you experience this, but when you're trying to build your own business, it's hard to, that money is so directed back into the business. It's hard to even pay yourself, let alone pay yourself enough to invest. So any advice on that one?
Yes, I do. So when I say single income families, typically that single income is coming from somebody who owns a business. And I find it so interesting that the people in general, not these people, as if not to section them off, but I'm trying to specifically talk about entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs might be really, really good at running the widget factory or providing the service, and that they might be able to spin up in the best way a multi-million-dollar business. But I have come across time and time again the business owner who is making, we'll call it $3, $4 million of revenue and doesn't know how to pay themselves. Not as in they understand
Yeah.
mathematically, how to pay. I understand how to move the money around, but they don't understand how do I not destroy the business? And so sometimes it's a lot of, okay, we've got really good velocity, we've got a lot of revenue, but then we're actually changing the internal fundamentals of the business to allow for one of the business expenses to be owner compensation. And so teaching people how to think about that, because again, the entrepreneur is typically very, very good at thinking, how do I build the business? How do I build the business? I have trained myself to become, how does the business pay the owner without jeopardizing the business? And I think that's a totally different skill set. Entrepreneurs are very, very good at certain things. And I think they become partially confused, partially embarrassed. Hang on, there's this thing that I'm not good at. And nobody likes to admit what they're not good at. And so it's kind of sneaky you have to kind of sneak into their mentality, if that makes sense. It's like, hey,
Yeah.
do you have these questions burning inside of your head, keeping you up at night? Yes. Why do you know that? So, because lots of other entrepreneurs also have those same thoughts. We should talk about that sometime.
Yeah, that's great. And you're right. I think it's so it's so important. And I feel like because we're kind of we get into habits and habit patterns. And so if you have a business and haven't paid yourself and you haven't really kind of gotten out of that struggle at some point, made some decisions that would allow you to see the business in the way that you're describing, it's hard. It only gets harder when you let it go too long. And then you feel like, well, I'm used to never paying myself at this point. So,
Yeah, exactly. And that's where, again, single income. So I'm imagining a spouse situation and two people who have entered into marriage. It's got to be hard on the non-working, the non-earning spouse, both watching the entrepreneur, the earning spouse, spin out of control almost, or literally spin out of control sometimes with not working themselves more and more and more because that's the skill that they're really good at. And then it's the business can become the bad guy, but the business can't be the bad guy because that's how we pay the bills. And so then you get a lot of this tension. And if that continues to run for a long time, that can become a real area of strife. And I've seen some really, really good situations. I've seen some really, really bad situations. But I like stepping in and letting people know, okay, we're lost in the woods right now, but it's okay because we can get back to the trail and we can go the direction we want. Right now, our current status is lost in the woods, but it doesn't mean that we live in the woods. It just means we need to get back on the trail.
yeah, I love that. And I do think sometimes entrepreneurs will kind of give themselves an excuse too and think if I just build the business big enough, that'll be my retirement at some point.
Yeah.
And that's also I would not recommend, but I
Well, if you think about that, if we play that out, okay, so now let's say Michelle. Michelle has this business. She's built it, built it, built it. She has never created the business to be able to pay her and to where she's more managing it. What Michelle has built is a job. And so now I'm just going to sell this business. No, no, no. You're selling a job and you're trying to find somebody else who wants to step into the shoes that you feel are so frantic, you can't understand how to step out of them. So just imagine a pair of shoes moving around to 80 miles an hour, and Michelle says, hey, do you want to put your feet in these? Nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. That's why I say we have to change the business fundamentally, not move from widgets to doodads, not like that. You're just changing how the money moves in the business to allow the quote unquote shoes to slow down enough that somebody else might think, I think I do want to put those on.
yeah, and what's the right time to have this conversation with somebody starting a business? Because, first couple years, you might really need to just plow all your money into it. But how do you look at it?
I look at it as, if people can get through the first 3 to 5 years, then they've turned the corner of building the business to maintaining the business, if that makes sense. So at first, the initial efforts of entrepreneurship, you are literally building this business, building the service model, something like that. The year 3, year 4, year 5, you're going to hit a level of comfort where it's more, you're trying to get more eyes looking at your service, looking at your product. And that's your next level of scaling. When you get to there, if you can turn that corner, because most people are going to either go out of business right here or create a business that will last time. And if you make that corner and now you're looking at how do I scale this thing by getting more people focused here, that is the time when as you scale, you don't want to scale chaos. You actually, as you turn that corner and you start to try to scale, you want to make sure that you've got everything organized well so that what you scale is already correctly organized.
Mm. You're making it sound so clear and so doable. Did you run into any of your own blocks as you were doing this yourself?
Oh, I am in the middle of it. I described that corner. I am looking at that corner right now, and and I see it, and that's what's really wonderful about getting into financial planning the way that I did. It is maybe the strangest way to get in, as in I'm doing a much more solo style here, but I'm able to mirror the entrepreneurship mindset and I'm able to play it out and I see it real time. And so when I say things like that to people, I'm saying what's in their head. I'm talking to them about the things that they only talk to themselves about in the mirror or while they're laying in bed staring at the ceiling. And I can meet them right there. And because I've taken the time to walk through it and I've tried to turn that corner, then I can talk about turning that corner. And I'm doing the same thing for myself. When I think about my family, I don't want my wife looking at me doing this job and saying, Mark is working really hard, but he's exhausted. Mark is working really hard, but I never see him. Mark is working really hard. He's very successful, but he keeps missing baseball games. He keeps missing the recital. He keeps not being there at these things that she knows I want to be there at. And so it's in that of how do I not let this get away from myself? And then you start having conversations and you start seeing, oh, I guess the detriment to some entrepreneurs, they only see their chaos. The benefit to me, I get to see everybody's chaos plus mine on top of it. And I start seeing the commonalities and I start, okay, we need to diagnose and treat this a lot faster because this is a recurring issue that people have.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I'm right in the middle of listening to Buy Back Your Time.
Hmm.
Read that book. I forget the author at the moment, something Martell, I think.
Yeah, Dan Martell. Yep.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, interesting. Um, So, okay, I want to go back just for a second. We're almost out of time, sadly, but I want to talk about retirement for just a second again, because I've had a few guests on talking about kind of the new way to think about retirement. Like, maybe 65 is no longer like the age you should be looking at, or what can you do after retirement to continue generating income, or can you possibly save enough for retirement to actually retire? Um, there's a lot. The world is different, and so I don't know any kind of just ideas on your part that might be like new ways to think about retirement, or maybe not.
Yeah. You know, I feel like I get caught up here because I think that this is the way people have always thought about retirement. But what I mean is this is the way I've always thought about retirement. But I keep telling people about it and people keep saying, "Oh, that's a very interesting way to look at it." Kind of like with the budgeting and the table scenario earlier.
Yeah.
But the way I talk to my clients about retirement, it's when your assets can generate the amount of money that they need to allow you to earn the dollar amount that you want to. Okay? And so it's not specifically, I'm going to set this timeline of which I actually have no control. There's a spoiler alert for everybody. I can say 65 just as easy as I can say 66 or 60. I can shift that around so that the timeline isn't specific. You think about that's drawing a line in the sand really close to the waves. We've got to understand that that's the kind of line that we're drawing. But let's say we put this there. What I'm really wanting, what I'm actually thinking, but I'm not saying it correctly when I say 65, I mean, at this point in time, I hope to have the choice to be able to live off of the money that I've saved and invested and earn the money that I want. Some people want to earn $0, which puts all of the burden on their invested accounts. And some people are okay still doing something. You talk to entrepreneurs, they're not real good at going from busy, 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 couch, couch. They're going to go crazy. Most entrepreneurs, 2 to 3 years into retirement, start another successful business because they can't fight their nature. And so we talk about, well, what does it look like? Okay, so Michelle, again, you've built this very successful company. We've done the reworking. Now this business is paying you. And now we're starting to set up, okay, you think you want to step away from this business in, we'll call it 5 to 10 years. Now we're really planning for the exit strategy. How do we get somebody else? How do we get Stacy to come in here and be the new Michelle? And how do we get Stacy to pay you the number and all the contracts and whatnot? But then it's, Michelle, what do you want to do after this? And again, very, very rarely do my entrepreneur clients say, well, I really just want to go and sit and do nothing because it's just totally not who they are. And so then it's, well, what do you want to do? And we start hearing, like, what are your goals? So what do you hope to do with your time? And then just a few sentences later, I'm typically helping my clients see, yeah, that's called consulting. Like that's what that is, you know. And I start showing people, I'll do some calculations and I'll let them watch me do the calculations where it's your retirement. If you make your invested accounts hold all the burden of paying all the bills, that is completely different than if you just earn 10, $20,000 a year. Yeah, you take somebody who's got a seven-figure revenue business and you say, "Do you think you can earn $20,000 a year?" And oh yeah, that's easy. If you can earn that much money, the burden is no longer on your investment accounts. And again, this is how I've thought about retirement all the time. But when I say it, does that sound a little bit different to you, or is that what your other guests have talked
No,
about too?
I think, yeah, I think that's a lot of the conversations we've been having. Like retirement doesn't need to mean sitting on the couch, or being on the golf course 24/7 or, whatever. I mean, there is a lot of opportunity post-retirement. Um, and yeah, I think for the people who, I mean, there's so much we could do another whole show on, what if you get sick? I mean, there's so many things that retirement could possibly be used for, which isn't, playing golf. But
Yeah.
so, you're right. I loved what you said about drawing a line in the sand close to the waves. Because I mean, there are a lot of thoughts, but I do think we it's fun to think of it differently because I do think in the past it was sort of I mean, in some cases, kind of a death sentence to like work like a crazy person for 50 years and then stop. Like you say, that hard stop is like, people would die a couple years later. I mean, so I
Yeah.
think that's not what you want. You don't want to save your whole life for that. So I do think it's important to be, kind of creative and innovative in that space too. While
Yeah.
also, like you say, I loved what you said because having the choice is what all of this is about anyway. I mean, money is really just to give you choices and options and allow you to have that freedom. So this is just another space where, sometimes um I don't know, it's almost like your financial life ends at that point where you retire and start using it. And it really shouldn't. You should still be doing financial planning in some way.
Yeah. Yes. When I work with people, I'm typically working through two acronyms because I'm a big fan of acronyms. That's how my brain works. But I tell people we're looking at financial CPR, which is how do we take the cash flow and direct it towards retirement? And what kind of protection do we need while we go from this cash flow towards retirement? So that's the CPR. And that covers a lot of things. That's very simple. But if you just remember financial CPR,
Hmm.
take the cash flow, direct it towards retirement. What kind of protection do I need to get me into or towards retirement? And then the larger one that I have is my clarity process, where we're covering cash flow, legacy, asset protection, retirement, investment, tax planning, and your goals. I believe all of those, if you can cover that entire acronym, if you can fill out my entire process, then all the information is laid right in front of you. It's kind of like taking the puzzle box and dumping it out. It's not initially helpful. You actually want all the pieces oriented correctly. You want the picture facing up. And I think that's what financial planning does. It takes all the information out of your brain and it puts it on the table and it orients it to where all the pictures are facing you. And
Yeah.
then you can start trying to put the puzzle together. And then you can start figuring out, well, what do I want to do? Do I want to pay the mortgage off early? Do we want a lake house? Do we want to send the kids to college? All those things are easier once all the information's on the table in front of you.
Yeah. Wow. I love the way you describe things. I think people should call you just to hear you put it in visualizations that you're doing here. So, um, well, I hate to be finishing here. There's so much more to talk about, but thank you so much for being on. And can you tell people how to contact you? Do you help people all over the country? What's your uh
Yeah. Yeah, it was important to me getting into this. Again, if I was going to have as much control as I could try to have, I wanted a very nimble business. And so my whole setup is completely virtual. I meet with most of my clients. I say 99 point something percent of my clients. It's all virtual, done via Zoom or phone call or text message. But if you want to find me, learn more about me, you can find me on LinkedIn. It's Mark Hansen. It's Hansen. It's not like the boy band from the 90s, which had an O. But yeah, Mark Hansen, you can see a lot of what I do there. That'll link you out to my website. You can read about me, how I help the Secret Service, which NFL team I'm part owner of, a couple little tidbits about me on there. And I've got a podcast that people would just want to hear, like, well, how does Mark think about this? How does Mark lay out his metaphors? You can hear more about me on my podcast, which is again linked on the website.
Okay. Wow. Thank you so much. That is great. And yeah, thank you for joining me today. I love talking to you, and I think you provided some great information to our listeners and very clearly and well done. So anyway, yeah, appreciate it. And so I'll put your information in the show notes. And audience, I hope you contact Mark because he knows what he's doing and he sounds like a really great steward for your money, as he put it. So I think that's wonderful. That's a gift to people. So yeah, thank you. And thank you, audience, for being here. Love having you join us on the Money and You Show. You can find us on all the podcast platforms. You can find the show on the Limit Free Life YouTube channel. And you can find me at limitfreelife.com and learn more about what I am doing out there and sign up for my newsletter so you can get all kinds of good information from me as well. And yeah, thanks so much for listening. We would love it if you would share the show with your friends who could use a listen, and also rate and review the show so we can continue to bring on great guests like Mark. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.